The old house felt empty. John and his mother Sarah moved through the rooms like shadows. John's father had passed away a few months ago. The house, once filled with laughter, was now shrouded in silence. Only bedtime stories offered a brief escape.
Every night, Sarah would tuck John into bed. Her voice, though laced with sadness, brought him comfort. She invented tales of brave knights and magical creatures.
John clung to these stories, finding solace in their fantastical worlds. One night, Sarah told a new story. It was about a haunted forest, filled with whispering trees and glowing eyes.
John was captivated. He begged his mother to tell him more. He loved the thrill of fear mixed with the safety of his mother's presence.
The stories became their nightly ritual, a way to forget their grief for a while. But as the nights passed, something strange began to happen. The line between story and reality started to blur. The whispers from the haunted forest seemed to follow John even after the story ended. John became fascinated by the haunted forest. He drew pictures of gnarled trees with faces and eyes. He talked about the whispers constantly, claiming he could hear them even during the day. Sarah dismissed it as an act of imagination. She thought he was just immersed in the story. But deep down, a seed of unease began to grow in her heart.
John's behaviour was becoming increasingly erratic. He would wake up screaming in the middle of the night, mumbling about shadows and voices. He refused to sleep alone, clinging to his mother in terror.
Sarah tried to comfort him, but his fear was palpable, contagious. One afternoon, Sarah found John talking to an empty corner of his room. He was whispering, his eyes wide with a mixture of fear and fascination.
When she asked him who he was talking to, he simply replied, "The whispers."
Fear gnawed at Sarah's resolve. She tried to rationalize John's behavior, but the whispers seemed to have seeped into their reality. The house felt colder, the shadows deeper. The silence was no longer peaceful, but heavy with unseen presence. Sleep became a distant memory. Every creak of the floorboard, every rustle of leaves outside the window sent shivers down her spine. She felt a constant sense of dread, a feeling that something was terribly wrong.
One night, Sarah woke up to a cold breeze. The hairs on the back of her neck stood on end. She turned to see John sitting up in bed, his eyes fixed on the bedroom door. His face was pale, his expression filled with terror.
"Mama," John whispered, his voice trembling. "He's here! The whisperer from the forest!"
Panic surged through Sarah. She pulled John close, her heart pounding in her chest. She told him it was just a nightmare, but her voice lacked conviction. She could feel the presence too, cold and menacing. Days turned into sleepless nights. The whispers grew stronger, the shadows more oppressive. John was fading, his once bright eyes now dull with fear.
Sarah knew she had to do something, but what? One evening, while John was asleep, Sarah decided to search for answers. She remembered an old book of folklore her grandmother had given her. It was filled with tales of spirits and curses, remedies and rituals.
As she frantically flipped through the brittle pages, her heart sank. There, in faded ink, was a chapter titled "The Curse of the Whispering Woods." It described a malevolent entity that fed on fear, particularly the fear of children. According to the book, the entity could be drawn out through stories.
My blood ran cold. The haunted forest, the whispers, it all made sense now. I had unwittingly invited the entity into our lives through my stories.
The book also mentioned a way to break the curse. It involved confronting the entity and offering it something it craved more than fear: truth. But what truth could she offer that would satisfy such a creature?
As I pondered this, a cold wind swept through the room. The book on my lap fluttered open to a blank page. Then, slowly, words began to form. appearing as if written by an unseen hand.
"The truth lies within the heart of the story," the message read. "Face your fears and the curse will be lifted."
Armed with this cryptic message, Eliza knew what she had to do. She had to confront the entity, but she wouldn't do it alone. She would face her fears alongside her son.
That night, I held Danny close and told him a different kind of story. I told him about my love for him.
As she spoke, Danny's fear began to subside. He looked at his mother, his eyes shining with newfound courage.
Mom, I think we can do this together.
Together, they turned to face the darkness. From the shadows of the fireplace, a figure began to emerge. It was tall and skeletal, with eyes that glowed like embers. The Whisperer had come for them. Terror threatened to consume Sarah, but she stood her ground. She held John's hand tightly, drawing strength from his presence. She looked into the entity's fiery eyes and spoke with a voice that trembled but did not break.
You feed on fear, but you are mistaken if you think fear is all we have. We have love, a love that death itself cannot diminish.
The entity hissed, its form flickering as if buffeted by an unseen force. It reached for John, its claws dripping with shadow. But Sarah stepped forward, shielding her son with her body.
You want the truth? The truth is, love is the most powerful magic of all. It can heal wounds, conquer darkness, and even break curses.
The room pulsed with energy. The air crackled around Sarah and John as the entity roared in anger. It lunged again, but this time a blinding light erupted from Sarah and John, pushing the entity back. The light intensified, filling the room with warmth and driving away the shadows. The entity writhed in agony as the light washed over it, its form dissolving into wisps of smoke. The whispers that had haunted them for weeks died down, replaced by a profound silence. As suddenly as it began, the light faded. The entity was gone, vanquished by the power of love.
Mom!
John ran into his mother's arms, burying his face in her embrace. Sarah held him close, tears of relief streaming down her face. The nightmare was finally over. With the entity gone, peace returned to their home. The shadows retreated, the whispers ceased. The house no longer felt cold and oppressive, but was once again filled with a sense of warmth and security. John's fear vanished completely. He was his old self again, full of life and laughter. He slept soundly through the night, no longer troubled by nightmares or whispers. The haunted forest was just a story again, a figment of their imagination. Sarah and John grew closer than ever before. They had faced their fears together and emerged from the darkness stronger and more united. The experience had forged an unbreakable bond between them, a testament to the enduring power of love.
Good night, sweetheart.
Good night, Mom.
They continued their nightly ritual of bedtime stories, but now the stories were filled with hope and courage, tales of love triumphing over darkness. And as Sarah looked at her son, his face lit by the warm glow of the bedside lamp, she knew that no matter what challenges life threw their way, their love would always see them through. Life after the haunting was different. There was still sadness, a void left by the loss of John's father. But there was also a newfound appreciation for each other, a deeper understanding of the precious and fragile nature of life. Sarah and John often visited John's father's grave, sharing stories and memories. They found solace in knowing that he was at peace and that his love continued to surround them. The experience taught them the importance of facing their fears head-on, of finding strength in their love for one another. They learned that even in the darkest of times, hope could be found in the most unexpected of places.
Let's send this lantern up for Dad.
I miss him, Mom.
I know, sweetheart, but he's always with us, in our hearts.
And so they moved forward hand in hand, their bond forged in the fires of adversity, their hearts forever touched by the haunting tale of the whispering pages.